Fran Duffy joins us from Eagles.com. Coming up in just a second. Tone, let me know when our man's going to be ready to fire. We have gone through the list of people we really want to see tonight. Nolan Smith names got added to that list. Tyler Steen, Nakobe Dean, running back rotation. Sidney Brown, Tyree Cleveland, Eli Ricks on that list as well. Let us know in the chat who you guys really want to see tonight take on the Cleveland Browns, get a taste for what they could be bringing to the table throughout the regular season. While we're waiting for Fran, Gunner, there are a couple of names on the bubble that are really looking to break into this Eagles rotation here. One name has been really intriguing since the start of training camp, and that's the undrafted free agent rookie Ben Van Sumeren, the linebacker of Michigan and Michigan State, which does not really appease a lot of people that are Michigan or Michigan State fans. Former running back, fullback, now linebacker. The word on him was raw coming into camp. Raw. Just your quick thought on Ben Van Sumeren, whether or not you think he'll at least make the practice squad.
Again, we don't know what Sean Desai and Matt Patricia are looking for in terms of makeup and ability or potential, raw potential that they could hone and develop along the way. I think because of the numbers game, you know, his opportunities are going to be slim at very best. Who knows? You know, that he may get picked up by somebody if the Eagles decide to cut him. You know, with the practice squad now expanded to 16 players, his chances of making the practice squad are better. But what do they determine they need to put on the practice squad for insurance policies? That's hard to determine with this team. We know how they love that. They love to keep their interior linemen on both sides of the ball. So we know there's going to be a decent amount of interior linemen on both sides of the ball. How many of these DBs can they honestly keep on a roster? You know, is Trey Sermon going to be protected on the 53 again, or is he going to have to settle for, you know, the practice squad this year? It's tough, man, because with the addition of players like Penny, Swift, Miles Jack, Cunningham, that means somebody's going to get pushed out. You know, somehow, somebody's going to get pushed out, and their options are either practice squad or they're going to have to, you know, their agents are going to have to get their game film ready and try to sell their market their clients somewhere else. It's so tough to determine, but, you know, again, every young player I saw for the Eagles that got out there, and they hustled. And whatever mistakes they made them by being aggressive, not lackadaisical. So that bodes well in that regard. But again, what do the numbers look like? You know, and when you talk about the numbers, you know, the linebacker position on this Eagle squad, you can basically figure out who's going to be on the roster for this team. Beyond that, don't know. Honestly, don't know.
We're going to get our take from our friend Fran Duffy of Eagles.com, breaking it all down when it comes to Eagle Eye in the Sky, the journey, the draft process, all the things that he breaks down there for PhiladelphiaEagles.com. Fran Duffy, fresh off the greens, I believe, as well on a game day. Fran, how are you, man?
Mark, Gunner, how are you guys?
Man, you must be living life, man. Hey, he said, hey, D-Gun, I'll see if I can get back to you. I'm on the 17th hole right now. I'm eyeing up an eagle putt. I don't know if I got time for you today.
Listen, I was at bogey golf for most of the back nine, and then I triple bogeyed on 18. So you know, it was a rough finish, but happy overall with the performance.
Good for you.
Did you wrap a club around a tree?
I thought about it, but cooler heads prevailed for sure.
Fran, we really appreciate you joining us today. It's great to catch up with you. You do phenomenal work for Eagles.com. Everyone checks out the stuff with all your breakdowns. You, Ike Reese, Marissa Pilla, an old friend of mine. She's fantastic as well. She's joining your crew also there at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. Now, we just heard from Derek Gunn, per a source, that Nakobe Dean is supposed to get some reps tonight out there on the football field. What do you think are fair expectations for Nakobe Dean's first taste of this preseason?
Yeah, I think just going in and trying to manage the defense, right? It's a new defensive scheme, so him getting those reps is very valuable. It wasn't surprising that he didn't play last week just because of the ankle injury that he was coming off of. He'd only practiced one time before that game. So being able to kind of get another week of practice, another week of reps under his belt before getting out there for some live action, not a surprise. So I'll be excited to see what Nakobe can bring to the table. along with all the rest of those linebackers out there. Obviously, it's going to be a good battle. Nick Sirianni has talked about that throughout the summer, that it's going to be fun kind of watch that competition unfold.
Hey, Fran, we keep hearing so much about Sidney Brown, and obviously after the way he played in that first game, people are just salivating over this kid. Is it possible that he's making a serious push to be a starter? Now, we know he's going to make the team, but could he possibly bump Blankenship or Edmonds for the starting position?
So watching the reps and how they've kind of been dispersed over the course of camp, Reed Blankenship has been with the starters pretty much every rep. It's been rare that one of the combinations back there has not included Blankenship. And so we've seen Justin Evans, we've seen Terrell Edmonds, we've seen Kayvon Wallace, and then this week, really for the first time, I think he mixed in a little bit before that, but this week for the first time, we saw Sidney Brown in that mix. So it certainly seems like he's getting a little bit more confident, starting to see things a little bit faster. Certainly that performance last Saturday night against the Baltimore Ravens helps. 9 solo tackles, all of them coming in the second half with the backups. But I'm interested to see what he looks like. Anytime you watch Sidney Brown, whether it's on film in college at Illinois, or whether you're out there on the practice field or taking in the preseason game, this guy is going 110 miles an hour every single time he's on the football field. And he even talked about this week, like, yeah, I'm not going to tone it down. You know, I know that I've got to, improve as a tackler, but it's really going to change with like my angles to the football. I'm not going to slow down. And so I think when you look at Sidney Brown, he's got some Ricky Bobby to him in terms of how he's going to approach things, but he's really fun. He's so physical. He is anytime he lines up on a ball carrier, there's going to be a high collision there, a high impact collision. So he's a lot of fun to watch. He took a great angle on a play where he was playing as the post safety. He was a free safety outside the numbers. It was an overthrown pass. If that ball was on the money, he's either laying out the receiver or he's making a play on the football, and that would have been great to see. So, because that's not really a dimension we saw from him in college. He was mostly a box player at Illinois. So being able to see that versatility with him playing deep down the field, I thought that was as important as all of those 9 tackles as well from Saturday night.
Gotcha. And Fran, make sure people are following you on all social media platforms, including the platform formerly known as Twitter, X. Make sure you're following him at EaglesXOS. Xos, obviously. So when it comes to Sidney Brown here, I think all of us are very impressed with how he hits and the speed in which he plays. There's a question here, though, and we're not really going to know the answer to this question until we see him in an actual NFL regular season game, when they're actually game planning for the opponent, when they're not just working on themselves, when it's not just vanilla offenses here. So when you watch Sidney Brown, we know where the hitting is at, the aggression and the speed with Sidney Brown. How is he when you watch him and you watch how he breaks down an offense? When you're breaking Sidney Brown down, how is he at reading what the defense is doing? Or excuse me, what the offense is doing?
Sure. I think that, that play that I just described with him playing free safety, he broke on that ball so fast because he was coming, Mark, from the opposite hash and was out by the sideline. And so you're not going to get there, regardless of how fast you are. You could run 4.3. You're not going to be able to get there if you don't read it well enough. So I thought it was really impressive that he broke on that throw as early as he did. He has shown that propensity to kind of read things. Even, watch him in Illinois, the plays that he made underneath in coverage. I mean, he's jumping routes. You could see him have an understanding of how offenses were trying to attack their zone coverage schemes. Oh, they're trying to high-low me here. I'm gonna bait the deep throw, and then I'm going to fall back. You saw some of that with him at Illinois. And so I think he's got a good understanding. The coaching staff, the scouting staff, everybody kind of raved about him. They talked about him on draft day, that he was a red star player for them in the pre-draft process, meaning that they kind of basically someone in that room stood up on the table for him and said, this guy is a Philadelphia Eagle through and through. And there wasn't a lot of argument in that room afterwards. And so I think Sidney Brown, he brings everything you want from an intangible standpoint. He's got that ferocity. He's got that explosiveness. Now it's about just continuing to kind of fine tune things as a tackler, breaking down and finishing one-on-one, becoming more consistent there. But I think that's something that he can definitely improve on.
Hey, Fran, the running back situation in these preseason games is quite intriguing. They don't play Gainwell. They don't play Scott the first game. Obviously, you got to get Swift and Penny some comfortability in this offense, this particular offense, even if you're not running with the ones. How do you see it shaking out tonight? I mean, we know I believe Trey Sermon is going to get the bulk of the touches in this particular game tonight, but how do you see the other guys figuring into the equation, if any?
It's one of the things I'm most excited to see when the inactives come out, Gunnar, is who is going to be active at running back. Nick Sirianni said after the game on Saturday that, hey, the way we approach it, we want all of our backs to be able to take some hits here this preseason. So my guess is we saw that Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott were inactive last week, that we will see one, if not both of them active this week, with the other guys, Swift and Penny, inactive. That would be my guess based off what Nick Sirianni said. But I guess we'll have to wait a few more hours until those inactive lists come out. But that would be my guess based off of what Nick Sirianni said on Saturday night.
We've talked about this topic before, Fran, but I think everyone gets their camp crush, if you will. Someone that's like, oh, no. Everyone's great, but you really got to see Christian Ellis. You really got to see Ben Van Sumeren. You got to see these names that are off the radar, right? Not exactly mainstream guys. Is there someone that you have watched this training camp and this preseason that you've gone, oh, now maybe the Eagles have something here? Is there somebody that jumps to mind when you think of that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. To me, like, there are a couple guys that I was really excited to see coming in, and some of them were like the rookies, right? Like Tyler Steen has matched everything I was hoping for. That Nolan Smith, I love what I've seen from Nolan Smith so far. But those are kind of like low-hanging fruit names, right? I would say a veteran that got signed kind of a one-year deal. It was kind of quiet when he was signed here. That's Kentavious Street. Now, it's a deep D-line room, right? I mean, there's a lot of bodies in there. So I don't know how it's going to shake out in a couple weeks, but to me, you look at Kentavious Street, he's kind of like a lowercase Milton Williams, and they were both converted defensive ends when they started their college careers. Milton at Louisiana Tech, Kentavious was at NC State, and he was a D end that could line up all across the defensive line. And if he had come out a couple years later, I feel like there would have been more buzz about him. He had a torn ACL, and he still went in like the 4th round, I believe, to San Francisco. And I think when you look at Street, he's got exactly the skill set that fits here in Philadelphia, but there's a lot of guys in that room. And so every single day, it felt like you saw Street make plays against the run. He's in the backfield a lot. He's sniffing out screen plays in the flat. Like he has had a really good camp. Now it's about, hey, carry that over to these preseason games and continue to show out and see if you can earn a spot in this roster.
Fran, the Nicholas Morrow situation is also interesting. I mean, he's a smaller backer, similar to a Kazir White. I mean, this guy's 6'1", 215. And then they bring in Cunningham. You already had Christian Ellis at 6'3", 235, 240. I don't think Morrow has that position locked up by any stretch of the imagination. And I think the Eagles have identified that by bringing in the likes of Cunningham to push for a starting job. You agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, plus you bring in Miles Jack as well on top of it at the same time. So they clearly want to continue to ramp up the competition level, in that room. They released Davion Taylor when they brought in those 2 veterans. You have Morrow, you have Jack, you have Cunningham. So there's 3 veteran presences there. You've got the second-year, 3rd-round pick in Nakobe Dean, who we talked about earlier. You've got Christian Ellis. You've got an undrafted free agent in Ben Van Sumeren. Let's throw them all in a bottle, shake it up, and see what comes out, right? That's kind of, I think, the way to kind of approach it. I'm interested to see who is able to shine from those vets. I thought Morrow had a really nice game this past week against Baltimore. He was able to show up on that screen pass early on in the game. He did another play on a screen a little bit later. Then Cunningham, this week against the Cleveland Browns, created 2 interceptions in team drills, tipped 2 passes up in the air from Deshaun Watson that Reed Blankenship was able to come up with. So using that length in coverage showed up for Zach Cunningham. He and Miles Jack both got pretty substantial contracts, second contracts here in the NFL. And so they have shown that they can play in this league. And again, you just kind of roll the dice with everybody and hope you can roll 6s here on one of these guys. I think with all of them, there's a pathway to success. Now it's just a matter of which one can come out on top.
Fran, I hate to invoke the cliche of preseason, but I'm going to say it one more time. Vanilla, okay? The vanilla offense, vanilla defense, and all that stuff. So we won't really see what Sean Desai wants to do until the season starts. But just watching practice, watching the players, breaking down the film and all that, are there any glaring differences, things that jump out to you that he might do a little bit differently than what Jonathan Gannon did here in Philadelphia?
I think that one of the things, and, look, I did a podcast with Sean Desai back in the summer over on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. So it was funny. We were talking through it, and anytime a new coach is hired, you guys know this, you've been here for a bunch of coaching hires, right? Like a new defensive coordinator comes in and is it a 3-4? Is it a 4-3? What is the coverage going to look like? Is this a cover 2 team? Is this a cover 3 team? Is it a man coverage team? At the end of the day, like every team is going to have all those clubs in their bag. I'm just off the golf course. You're going to have all those clubs in your bag, and there's only so many ways you can deploy all 11. So really it's about just knowing like, all right, what levers do I need to push or do I need to pull this week in order to get a win? I think they're going to be very versatile and multiple, which is something that the previous defensive scheme was as well. Jonathan Gannon, they mixed things up from that standpoint. But the one thing that Sean Desai has said, since the moment he got hired and that first press conference was he wanted to be palpable. He wanted the opposing teams and fans to be able to feel how violent and aggressive that they were. And I think that shows up. This is, I think, is going to be a very aggressive scheme. Look, they had 70 sacks last year, right? To imagine that they were going to be able to reach the 70 sack mark again, that's probably unrealistic. I think that of course, there's going to be hopes in the building that they reach that number again, but that's going to be tough to do. So I don't know that the numbers are going to be the same, but I think that will be the difference is that it will just feel like a more aggressive defense. And you could do that in a lot of different ways, whether that's blitzing or how much more press coverage you're going to play or some of the looks you're doing pre-snap. There are lots of different ways to be more aggressive and put more pressure on opposing offenses and, make them think, make them react to what you're doing. But I think that Sean Desai, depending on the opponent, he's going to know which of those buttons he wants to push.
Yeah, but Fran, the $1 million question is, whose defense is this? Is it Desai's defense? Is it Matt Patricia's defense? Because that's going to be a topic of discussion, whether it's going good or bad. It's going to come up periodically throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, my sense of it is that it is Sean Desai's defense, and he was in the building before Matt Patricia was, so that would be my sense of the situation. But yeah, I'm sure that hopefully we don't get to that point where that's going to be a discussion. But I think that look, he was hired as the defensive coordinator. He's done it before in the league. That would be my guess that it would be his defense.
Flip it over on the offensive side of things here. I have to ask this question because I'm just very curious to see your reaction to it. Is Marcus Mariota a lock to be the backup quarterback? This is a backup spot regardless, but still, the way Tanner McKee played in his first game looked like a guy who has certainly been here before. I always ask young guys what I look for in the first exposure to NFL play, whether it be preseason or not. It just looked like it belonged. He looked like he'd been here for a number of years already. Can he threaten at all to be the number 2 guy behind Jalen Hurts?
I think that certainly the competition is going to continue. That is one of the core values of Nick Sirianni, and certainly he's going to be involved with that offense and with that quarterback room, right? So I think that competition will continue, but I think they're going to go into the season with Mariota as the backup. You bring him in, he's the veteran presence. He's had success in this league. He's a guy that has that ability to beat defenses with his legs, and that's something that Jalen can do. And so if he steps in, the offense doesn't drastically change from a philosophical standpoint and from a play calling standpoint. And so I think that that's something that certainly is in Mariota's favor as well. That said, you love what Tanner McKee did. I mean, he came in, he ran at Stanford. Everybody kind of thinks of Stanford as like pro style throwback, 7 offensive linemen and 3 tight ends out there on the field at any given time. But last year they converted into a heavy RPO zone read type of offense, and he executed the offense pretty well. Considering some of the O-line issues they had, he was still able to have success. And so I think you're able to look at Tanner McKee. This is a guy that was a 5-star recruit, one of the top quarterbacks in the country when he was coming out of high school. There's pedigree there, and I think that has shown up. I'm excited to see what he can look like here tonight against the Cleveland Browns and then next week against the Colts. But my guess is that it is Mariota's job going into the season. But the beauty about these backup jobs is there can be give and take and ebb and flow there. And us on the outside, we don't know because we don't have to see it every Sunday, right? Because they're backups. And so we'll see exactly how that unfolds throughout the season. But I think it is Mariota's job right now.
Yeah, Fran, I think this young receiver, Tyree Cleveland, 6'2", $190. He wasn't mentioned much throughout training sessions, but all of a sudden he becomes a wow factor after that first game against Baltimore. Is this a young man who can legitimately push for a number 5, number 6, or even a number 4 receiving spot on this roster?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that's been in the league. This will be his 4th season already. He was a 7th-round pick of the Denver Broncos a couple years back. He's had a handful of catches in the league. He's kind of been on and off their practice squad and active roster. So he's been around. And you mentioned his size. He's got some wheels too. He's got the ability to attack down the field. He can play some special teams. And I think that will ultimately come down to whether or not he makes the 53, is if he can I'm going to go out and I'm going to be a gunner. I'm going to be on coverage units. I'm going to be able to offer that versatility because we haven't seen him as a returner really. So what can you do, whether it's blocking on special teams or covering kicks? Because honestly, that's something we've seen from Zacchaeus even so far. When they went out there for kickoff coverage units early on in training camp, the only offensive player on that kickoff coverage unit was Olamide Zacchaeus. So I think that gives him kind of the pull spot in terms of having that number 4 job right behind Quez Watkins in the slot. So I think you look at that and you say, okay, like you get to wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, what else can you do for this offense and for the special teams? You have Britton Covey. All right, okay, this is a guy that can work from the slot. He returned punts for this team a year ago. That is value that he can bring. If you are, whether it's Tyree Cleveland or if you're Deion Kane or if you're Joseph Nagata or Johnny King or Jaden Hazelwood, all these other guys on the back end of the roster, what else can you do? Are you a dominant blocker? Can you be a dirty work player like what Zach Pascal was a year ago and be a core 4 special teams guy? Can you return kicks? Can you return punts? What else can you do for us? I think that's the question that Tyree Cleveland's going to answer. But hey, like making plays in the meantime, that's a good thing. So this week on Tuesday, the final session of team periods against the Cleveland Browns, they had like a scrimmage, like got us win 2-minute drill situation, 45 seconds left, 1 timeout, go win the game. And it was like 3rd or 4th down. Marcus Mariota lofts the ball up in the back corner of the end zone. Tyree Cleveland comes down with it. The whole team mobs him. There's a mob scene in the back of the end zone. So like that's what you want to see from Tyree Cleveland offensively. But again, it's about like what else can you offer this team if you're going to make the 53-man roster?
Great. Fran, last thing for me, Gunnar, I don't know if you have another one, but last one for me is Quez Watkins. Do you think we see him tonight?
My guess is we probably wouldn't. I don't know where he's at from like the hamstring standpoint, but him not playing in the game last week and then not practicing this week against Cleveland, my guess is kind of like Nakobe Dean. Like even if he is like healthy enough that if we had to practice or if they were playing a regular season game today, if he's ready to go, like that would be one thing. But I don't think they need to rush him out there. This is a guy that's been in the offense for 3 years. He knows what he's doing. Keep him healthy right now. And if he is healthy, like, all right, we'll get him some reps next week if we feel like we need to. But I don't think that he's a guy that they would rush back. My gut would say we probably wouldn't see Quez tonight.
Fran, I love how Jeff Stoutland is cross-training Tyler Steen. He had him out of tackle, then they move him to guard. What do you think and it's only a limited sample. Where do you think what position he best fits the structure of this offensive line?
I think if we're talking like 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now from Tyler Steen, which by the way, like so far, he looks like he's going to stick. Like he looks like he is an NFL player. I think he's probably best at guard, but he has not looked bad at tackle either. And so that's what's been really intriguing with him. What I love right now, like day one, he's a good run blocker. He plays with excellent leverage. He's got great pop. In practice, we're seeing him move guys off the ball on double teams, single blocks, one-on-one. He's got power to him, no question. And look, in pass protection inside, he had a couple good reps last week against Baltimore, and that has shown up in training camp as well. I think it's notable the fact that we have not really seen, look, they always cross-chain their guys. They want their offensive linemen to be versatile. They're both the starters and the backups. That is very important to Nick Sirianni and to Jeff Stoutland. We have not really seen them do it often with rookies in their first training camp. And I think that that's very notable with how they view Tyler Steen, that they said like halfway through, all right, he's only playing right guard right now. Bam, in week 2, you're on a left tackle. And not only that, but mid-drive, all right, you're going to be with the left. You're going to be at left tackle with the 2s. You're going to mix in a right guard at times with the 1s, and it might be play 4 in a period, and he's at right guard. Now it's play 5, wholesale hockey line change. Except, all right, Tyler Steen, you're going to move over to left tackle. Everything is backwards. Your sets are different. Your angles are different. The type of defensive linemen you're seeing are different. The fact that he's able to do that on the fly as a rookie in his first camp when guys are off, they're typically swimming. I think that's really, really impressive, and I think that says a lot about Tyler Steen. I'm excited about what he can be. Cam Jurgens has been really good at right guard, and so that's kind of like made that decision for them. They have not really shared reps at all with the starters, he and Cam. It's been Cam's job on the right side, but I feel like if there is an injury anywhere up front and you had to slide pieces around, you feel good about Tyler Steen being able to step in and be one of those next guys up off the bench.
Okay. Mark, your audio's off.
Come on. I knew that was going to get me. I knew that was going to get me at some point. There's a little bit of a ruckus going on in the house, so I wanted to make sure you guys didn't hear that. But Fran, what'd you shoot today? I know you had some bogeys, but what'd you end up with?
92, which I'll take.
Okay.
I'll take a 92.
Okay.
Anytime I can be in the low 90s, that's a fine day at the office.
There you go. The man's a warrior. He gets 18 in during the day. He's got a football game to cover at night. He's all over the place. Make sure you guys catch Fran. Marissa Pella, is Ike with you guys tonight as well?
Ike will be with us tonight, so it's always a good night. Hopefully, we can get a victory cheer from Ike Reese here at around 10 o'clock.
Absolutely. Tell Marissa and Ike I said what's up. We appreciate you joining us, Fran. Make sure you guys are following all things Fran Duffy on Eagles.com as well as at EaglesXOS, X's and O's, obviously, on the Twitterverse as well. Fran, thanks so much, brother.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Fran Duffy joining us there, Eagles.com, and all things. When it comes to breaking everything down, Fran does a phenomenal job, Gunner. I know you've seen it. He does such a great job. It's great. The things that come out on social media of his breakdowns are fantastic. I highly recommend. It's must watch content for any Eagles fan out there. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this Eagles game tonight against the Browns. Some interesting stuff out there about Hassan Reddick. We talked about the thumb injury. We're both expecting them to be back by week 1. We'll get into the baseball conversation as well with the Phillies and Bryce Harper going yard twice. We got some James Harden stuff we want to sprinkle in a little bit later on. Martin Frank will join us at 2 o'clock today to talk about this Birds game tonight. So much to cover, but right when we come back, we'll mention a couple other names that are on that roster bubble that could help their case tonight against the Browns. That's when we come back here on Sports.